When I first started experimenting with CSS small a animations, I was confused by, well, a lot of things, frankly, but in particular, three properties of CSS related to animations: transform, transition, and animate. It didn't help when CSS then promoted three of the transform functions into properties themselves: rotate, scale, and translate. Well, I mean, it helped me as a developer, but it didn't help my understanding of things. So what I want to do is show you that if someone had shown me a graphic like this, it might have helped me. This right here is sort of a Venn diagram that I first sketched and then created as a web page. Transform, transition, and animate. Transform is, as it says here, transformations are common to both transitions and animations. Now, this video is not actually about animation or transformations, transitions. It's about overlapping elements like this. Specifically, it's about overlapping elements using CSS Grid. Now, this example is what I played with the other day, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a more simplified example that doesn't have transparency and linear gradients and things like drop shadows and things like that. It doesn't even have text on it. So I'm going to try to make this a little simpler. What I'm going to do is take you through how I created this, which is essentially the foundations of what you saw a moment ago. Let's take a look at let me show you the HTML first of all. This is all there is to this. A body tag, a div with a class of wrapper, and then three boxes. Let's take a look at what this looks like when you're not using any CSS. And if you didn't know, you can do this by view, page style, no style. Here it is. I enlarged it. This is what it looks like without any CSS. When we add the CSS again, we're back to this. This is all the CSS, 48 lines, most of which are just brackets, to get to this. I'm going to take the CSS, essentially section by section. Turning on the grid lines from my web dev tools, you can see that there are 4 columns and 1 explicit row. And I'm assuming you have some basic knowledge of CSS Grid. The 3 boxes are inside a div with a class of wrapper. And if I disable the display grid and save, see what happens is they no longer line up together. They just stack one on top of the other. And then none of the CSS Grid related declarations in this rule even matter. So I've turned the grid back on, and you can see the grid line numbers. You know that if there are 4 columns, there are 5 line numbers. These lines are numbered as line numbers, not as columns. This is first column, second column, third column, fourth column. Now, first question I had to ask myself is, how do I arrange these? How many columns should I have in my CSS rule to make this happen? And what I realized that the least number of columns I had to have is 4, because as you can see, the left green box, which is shaped like a circle, extends from line 1 to line 3. I just made the center circle or center box transparent so you could see that. And box 2 extends from line 2 to line 4. Let's go through some of the CSS. Box, all of these are boxes. Here, we'll go back here. Div class equals box 1, box 2, box 3. So there are some common rules for the box class. One of the most important ones is where the grid rows start and end. Note, if I comment out these 2 declarations, this is what we get. The three elements, they do line up like kind of like we'd want it, but they're all on separate rows. So it's essential that we set the grid row start and grid row end to 1. I'll bring it back. And there we are. Some other declarations for the box. Border radius 50, that's what makes them not boxes. I can go ahead and remove this. Okay, I was able to take the border radius off, and now you really can't see what's what. So I'm going to put this back on. And we have our circles again. Aspect ratio 1 keeps them in a square or a perfect circle when we have the border radius on. And then each of the 3 boxes has its own rules. And there are very few declarations for each one. There's a background color for box 1, box 2, and box 3. And there are declarations for where their grid columns start and grid column end. You may know that this can be written in shorthand, grid column, with a 1/3. And when I save that, nothing changes. If we look at that original, the original diagram that I made, the Venn diagram, sorry, we have more happening here. We have a little information box up here, and then you can see linear gradients, having to deal with z-index to make this transform box come out front. And then I had to do a little bit of work to make the transition word left aligned and the animate right aligned. And I did that with by using the justify content declarations for CSS Grid. If you found this little presentation helpful, I'd appreciate you letting me know. Feel free to leave comments down below, and I will read them all and get back to you. Thanks.